Hello, welcome to The Power of Our Story. We are a community where veterans, first responders, and all protectors can connect, share their experiences, and heal together. So today, I want to welcome our guest, Stuart Grazier. Stuart is a retired Navy pilot who served 20 years in the military. During a 14-month deployment to Iraq in 2008-2009, Stuart had the opportunity to do a deep dive study into real estate investing and learned about the power of passive income. Through endless learning, lots of determination, and continuous action, he and his family have become financially free. Stuart is also the co-founder of a men's mastermind group, which aims to network, educate, and connect other men that are wanting to grow as husbands, dads, and leaders within their community. Stuart has been married to his beautiful wife, Crystal, for 16 years, and they have two amazing children, Collins, 10-year-old girl, and Wells, 7-year-old boy, and reside in Parker, Colorado. So, Stu, I want to welcome you today, and I will hand it over to you, and then we will have a coffee and conversation discussion afterward. So thanks for being here.
Wow. Well, thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the invite. I'm humbled just to have this opportunity to speak with everyone here and just, I guess, talk through my story a little bit. And I just hope that it resonates with someone and hopefully someone can learn from it. Um, I guess I'll just start with just a little bit more background beyond just what you kind of gave in the bio. I was born and raised in Texas. My mother and my father divorced when I was 5 years old, and I give that piece because it comes to be important later on in my story and my journey. So I grew up in a single family household until my mom remarried when I was in middle school, and we moved to a small town in Texas, like real small town. Think like the Friday Night Lights movie of everything is the whole town goes to the Friday night football game. That's kind of what it was. But I uh, I went to a Navy versus SMU football game before I moved, and there was a F-18 flyover, and Navy guys were marching onto the field, and then shortly afterwards, the movie Top Gun came out, and I was hooked. And so ever since then, middle school, I wanted to go be a Top Gun jet pilot in the Navy and follow the foots of Maverick. So I was bound and determined to do that. So I was very focused on school, extracurricular activities, and everything I could do to get and go that route. My my stepfather, who my mother remarried when I went into middle school, was very supportive. He was a Marine, and so he was very supportive in pushing me to kind of go that direction. So I was fortunate enough to join the Navy. I got commissioned and went to the Naval Academy. I spent 4 years there, and then I went to flight school. And when I was in flight school, I realized that flying helicopters was way cooler than flying jets. It was a lot more fun, and so I went that direction. So I flew helicopters in the Navy. Ended up doing 20 years of military time. A lot of that was in San Diego. Spent 10 years there in San Diego, and then transitioned to learn how to fly a C-40, which is like a Boeing 737. Thinking I wanted to be an airline pilot after I got out of the Navy. Along that journey, I met my beautiful bride. We met in San Diego. She was a Texan as well. And so we have a lot of roots there in Texas as well. We've been married 16 years now, and we have two children. Like I said in the bio, 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. Along the journey in the military, I got really interested in entrepreneurship, business, real estate investing. I've always kind of been like an entrepreneur at heart. Like, even back in high school, I was always like mowing lawns and trying to make money. And then I went to the Naval Academy, and I was like the guy that was at night running around the halls, like doing like selling like underground t-shirts and like trying to make money, like do little small businesses there. So I'd always had a heart and an interest in small business and entrepreneurship. And I started learning, going to conferences, reading books, and getting really interested in real estate investing. And about the 15-year mark in the Navy, I got stationed in Naples, Italy, and I got stationed with my best friend in the world. We were college roommates for all 4 years, and we had never really talked about, going into business together and what we were doing separately. But we had separately been investing in real estate, buying rental properties, flipping houses, stuff like that. And through our time in Naples, Italy, we were on a staff, so we had a decent amount of time to hang out, go work out at lunchtime together, go on trips and travel around Europe together with our families. And we started talking about going into business together and doing some real estate investing, which we ended up doing. We started a house flipping company in 2018, and we had a few set parameters that we wanted to make sure happened in this business. One was we were both believers in Jesus Christ, and so we had a faith aspect too that we wanted to make sure was in our business, and we wanted to make sure that we were giving. And so we called the company Storehouse 310 Ventures, which comes from Malachi 3:10 in the Bible, which says that we want to bring a tithe to the storehouse. And so 10% of every house that we flipped, every profit that we made, we created a donor advised fund through the National Christian Foundation, and we then supported other nonprofit organizations that we got to know and love and support. And our whole goal of it all was one, obviously, to kind of build financial freedom for ourselves and create a runway and a path to where we could exit the military in the future and not really have to go into any type of full-time W-2 job, which there's nothing wrong with that. But we just had an idea that we wanted to kind of be that entrepreneur, run our own schedule, have kind of that financial freedom and that time freedom to be with our families. But what we ended up finding out was as we got closer to retirement, the company grew very fast. And, we were very fortunate in that aspect, but it kind of started to take over our lives. I ended up being my last tour in the Navy I was the executive officer of a big Navy Reserve Center here in Colorado, basically in charge of about 700 people. And David, my business partner, was the commanding officer of a big cyber command in Fort Meade, Maryland. And so he was also very busy. But we were flipping 50 houses a year, which was also very, very busy. So we found ourselves in the space of, we said we were doing this for all the right reasons. We said we were doing this for financial freedom. We said we were doing this for our family. We said we were faithful. We said, health was important to us. We said that our family and our friends and having fun and all these areas of our life that we said were a priority in our lives, but our actions weren't matching our words. I found myself in 2020, 2021, as I'm getting closer to retirement. I retired in 2022. But about a year and a half out, I found myself in a pretty dark space. I was the most unhealthy I've ever been. I was the heaviest I'd ever been. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't reading my Bible. My wife and I just felt like we were roommates. We would like high five in the morning after I'd been up for 2 hours working on my real estate business and going to my Navy job. I'd come home again, kind of high five, have dinner, and go right back to my office to work on my real estate. My kids just saw dad with a phone in front of his face all the time. Even at the dinner table, I was social media or having phone calls with investors trying to raise capital for our deals, fighting the next fire that we had in our flip that we had going on. And so I had no relationship with my family. There was just a lot of stuff that was happening in my world that was just kind of going down a slippery slope. And I started having a lot of anxiety. I found myself lashing out at my kids a whole lot for nothing, no reason whatsoever. I started to see a therapist before I got out of the Navy just to kind of talk through some of this stuff. And I started kind of opening up and being vulnerable with David, my best friend and business partner, and just some other guys that I was close with. And at the time, we were in a business mastermind group. We were in a group of entrepreneurs, business owners, real estate investors, trying to just, become better in that area of our life. And we had a coach that kind of saw the writing on the wall. And he put us through this exercise, this mental exercise, that honestly completely changed the trajectory of my life, and was the cause really of like everything that we're doing now. And he basically said to us, "I see you're busy. I know what's going on. I've been there." He said, "Let's do a mental exercise of looking at your life. And if you don't change anything in your life, if you keep on doing the same thing that you're doing over and over and over again, what does your life look like 10 years down the road?" And I sat there and I thought about it, and I just had this vision that was not good. And I just saw my wife and I just completely like separating, and even more so becoming just like roommates. Me and my kids not having a relationship, me and my God, Jesus not having a relationship, unhealthy emotionally, physically, spiritually. Um, and I knew from that moment on that I had to make like a major change, to get more focused on those priorities in my life that I said were a priority that I wasn't actually taking action on. And so David and I talked through that. In 2021, we decided to stop flipping houses, stop the real estate business pretty much altogether. Anything that was currently in our pipeline for flipping houses, we just finished, and then we decided to not sell them, and we decided to take everything and just turn them into our own rental portfolio. So the end of 2021, we had done about 20 houses that we had just turned into our own personal rental portfolio, and we stopped the business altogether. And we told ourselves that we knew that we had to surround ourselves with some other men that were going to hold us responsible and accountable to the things in our life that we said were important to us. So we had been in, men's groups. I've been in small groups at our church. I've been in business masterminds, and we knew that vulnerability and accountability worked. And so we just invited 10 men that were close to us, either from our military days, high school days, college days, that we knew that were close to us and that would show up every single week. And we just asked them if they would just show up once a week on Zoom, similar to conversations like this, and talk through these areas of our life that we said were a priority, and come up with action steps. Define what success looked like for our family, define what success looked like for our faith, and then come up with action steps and then go do it, and then hold each other accountable to doing those steps. And so we started that process with about 18 months left in our military career. And it was the most purposeful, meaningful, fulfilling weekly call that I never missed for the 18 months before getting out. And it completely healed me. It completely changed me, and it grew the other 10 men just as much as myself and David, my business partner. So we quickly realized that middle-aged men, high-performing men with families, with businesses, it can get really, really lonely. And if you're not really intentional about living your life in some of these areas, to make sure that you're, sticking with these areas of your life that you say are a priority, it can go downhill really fast. And so what we decided to do was start a business from it, a men's mastermind. We came up with about an 80-page curriculum based on 9 core topics. The core topics being our faith, our family, our friends, our fun, intimacy with our spouse, our finances, giving, stewardship, our mindset, and our health. So we came up with a framework, and we decided to come up with basically a 4-week framework and hit one of those topics every single month. We called it the real framework. And so week 1, we basically reflect on the topic. So we redefine what success looks like for our family. We reflect on. We have some really hard questions that we ask that we expect you to journal on. Then we expect you to execute. Come up with, once you've defined what it means for you to be successful, how you would become better in this area. How are you going to execute one action item to take to become better? We assign accountability partners, and expect you to talk to your accountability partner throughout the week, throughout the month, talk about what is going on, how you're doing, And then week 4 is live. How are you going to live this out? What's making on your calendar? What are you doing to make calendar level change to become better in these areas? So we started to grow that, and where we're at now, we have about 40 men in our group. We've done different iterations of price points, um, different iterations of times of meetings, days of meetings, how often they occur, and what we quickly realized, and this is a very new change for us as of 2025, what we quickly realized is going back to the very beginning of what we really wanted to do was we wanted to create a community of men to become better in our lives and glorify God. And we realized that there's some barriers to that. One, we realized that a lot of men aren't going to really sign up for jumping on a Zoom call with other men just to like get vulnerable and talk about their feelings. That's really hard to do. That's really hard to sell. And we quickly realized also that paying for that, it's hard enough to just to get people to men to show up, but then paying for that is even harder. So we decided to turn it into a ministry, and what we do now, again, it's now free. So we have opened it up, and it's an invite only. So men that have been in the group for a while have the opportunity to invite other men into it, and join us to become better in these areas. And we have 2 rules: you have to be honest, and you have to be vulnerable. And it's just amazing to see a group of men come together and talk through stuff that you can't talk about anywhere else. And there's tears, there's laughter, there's business deals being done because you get to know each other so well, which was never the intention. And there's a lot of just great friendships that are formed through these calls. And then what's really cool is you get a group of men that find out that they're in the same location, and then you go and do stuff together in person, and just have a lot of fun together, and create a community around each other, and grow that way. So we ended up starting a podcast around the same topics, and we're about 400 episodes in now. It's called the Kinetic Man Podcast. We've had some amazing guests from different authors to influencers in the space, pastors, all kinds of really cool stuff. And so we're very um, interested, in helping men become better husbands, better friends, better leaders, and better fathers. And it's just been a joy to be a part of it. Um, One thing, we are very focused on military presence. I'd say the majority of the men in the group are military veteran. And what I found, what was really, really hard about transitioning out of the military was community, was having a tribe. Because I think in the military, you are forced into community, often maybe not wanted, but like, I mean, if you think about it, as soon as you go into a new command, there is a community, there is a tribe of like minded individuals. They're on the same mission, on the same purpose. You show up to work every single day with, you go on deployment with, your wives get connected, your families get connected, and you have an immediate trust in each other through the military. And as soon as you leave that, that all goes away unless you're really, really intentional about trying to plug in somewhere else. And so now, when I talk to military guys and gals that are planning on transitioning out, that's one of the first things I tell them that they really must do is try to find a community, try to find a tribe um, that you can plug into, that you can, have conversations with, that you can go and do fun things with, that you can feel like you're a part of something. Because I feel like that's really, really important. And I feel like that's a big piece of why veteran suicide is so high right now, because we get lost. The first thing that most of us do, and you go to, your transition course, is they just try to help you get a job. And any paying job, like, yeah, it's great. We need income, but that's not going to fulfill you. That's not going to give you any purpose. That's not going to give you what you had in the military. And so, having a community, having a group of men and women that you can surround yourself with, and live for a bigger purpose, I think is really, really important. So I just wanted to kind of hit that before we kind of do some Q&A.
I want to thank you so much for coming on. I just what you're sharing to me just is gold. I mean, from the years of all the stories that I hear, what you have set up, the anchor of your faith and what you have practically set up through that is just so needed. So it's exciting to hear it. It's exciting
Yeah.
to hear what you're sharing. My Rolodex is going around. Okay, who am I going to send this video to? Because it's wonderful to hear what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been one a lot of fun and purposeful and meaningful for me, but it's been really cool to see the growth of the individuals that are showing up every single month. I mean, and these men have given me permission to tell these stories, but you know, one of the guys in our group from the very beginning was similar to me. His dad left when he was 5 years old, and through a lot of hard conversations, like he had a lot of hurt and anger towards his father. And through some encouragement and discussions, we he came to the conclusion that he needed to find him and reach out to him. He hadn't talked to him in 30 years. Like he left, never talked to again. And through his grandmother, he got in touch with her. He wrote a letter. She had his address. He wrote a letter to his father, and he replied through a letter. And that went to a phone conversation. That went to a video conversation, and then that went to an in-person meetup with someone who hadn't met his dad in 30 years. And it's not perfect, but it's a start of a relationship of rekindling something with his dad that he had some really big, large feelings towards and emotions and hurt. And just something like that to be a part of, to be a fly on the wall and see something like that is really, really cool. I mean, we've had guys find their faith again who left the church when they were like after they had left high school because their parents like were forcing it so much, and he's now back in the church and taking his family and running a small group at his church and volunteering at the church, and just like his faith is on fire right now. We have guys that have lost 40, 50 pounds because, their health was a major issue. They've gotten off of some of their medications because they've turned their health around. We have had guys on the verge of divorce that have turned their marriage around and have become like intimate with their spouse, and there's just so many really really cool stories of men just like turning their lives around and becoming focused on being better husbands and better fathers and better leaders in the community. So that's what's really really important to me.
It's so interesting because the data is now there. I mean, we can see it, but the
Yeah,
data is there that when people have a safe place to share their stories, release their stories, that's what they call it, release their stories, there is a true holistic healing effect that starts getting rolling. And it's so beautiful because that sounds exactly what is happening in your group. And gosh, that's really exciting. Well, I have a feeling that my two friends here have a lot to say on this, so I want to open it up. Thanks again. It's fantastic, Stu.
absolutely.
God.
Hey, Stu, brother, you're singing to my heart, man. I
Yeah,
I felt like I was inside your mind. Our It's interesting, right? When you meet people that you have such similar background with. The military is an obvious one,
yeah,
right? But going back in time to childhood issues, my folks separated when I was young. Listening to the story that you just shared about your friend who had an issue with a relationship or lack of a relationship with a father, that's me as well. The redemption that's going along now with that man and his father, I got the benefit of that in a very short period of time. But I know God was absolutely the one orchestrating all of that. Didn't know it at the time, right? It took
yeah.
a while to get through my thick head,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, you're a
but the other
Marine, so
well,
there's
absolutely.
give
My
yourself
my
some grace.
stepdad, my stepdad still calls me Jarhead. It's like, yeah, Scott, who's that? It's like, but but then the other piece of that is when you see people, when you share that part of your story about how important it is have grace and to find forgiveness and then move in that direction. One of the gals that's part of the Power of Our Story heard me and another veteran sharing about this issue, and we had different points of view, which is fine. But in that, she decided, you know what, based on what you said, I'm going to reach out. And man, what a what an amazing story that has become. And just to see the light in her eyes when she talks about the relationship she now has with her dad, because she, you know, anyhow, that is fantastic when you see good news stories. And just watching you from the time you started talking, I can see in your eyes you have a gentle soul, that you're a good man. And when you were talking through the things that were hard, that it was hard and that you absolutely felt the pain that you were going through, and then realizing, hey man, I've fallen short here. But the accountability piece that you speak to is huge, because we have to have that, right? We have to reconcile that if we're going to be honest with ourselves and with God, because He knows it. He knows it anyhow,
That's
right?
right.
He's just waiting for us to figure that out, with His help. But yeah, it's great to see that there are folks like you and the people that are in your circle that are doing these things with men, because men need this. As a veteran Marine, I served, as we talked up front, I served 21 years as a Marine, and that's a meat eating club, and you're not hanging out talking about your feelings, right? That
That's right.
just doesn't happen. You may get a good bud occasionally that you can share things with, but that's just not what you do. And so part of the Power of Our Story, I mean, that's what we do, right? We talk, we share stories. It's okay to not have an answer. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to cry if that's what happens, right? No one's going to say, oh, geez, look at this guy. Now, but it's important to have that space and to have people that come alongside you like you guys are doing. And that's wonderful, because I think things have changed so much in our culture. Men are struggling with, who am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? How do you lead a family in today's environment? And hopefully that's going to change here. Uh, but fundamentally, if we have our hearts right with God, then things are going to change, and they will change for the better. It might not be instant, but there will be, goodness. And thank you so much for what you're doing. Uh, this makes my Friday hearing your story.
Oh,
It, it
good.
it it really does. I'm so glad that I almost forgot. I was doing something, and you know this thing could be good and bad. But
That's
at
right.
my age, the calendar functions in this, or
That's
they
right.
keep me on track. And so I
That's
got
right.
that reminder, and I'm like, oh, I got to get over here. But
Yeah.
again, thank you. And hey, I spent some time in Colorado as well as a kid. My dad was in the Air Force, and we were stationed at the Air Force Academy.
Oh, cool.
He was a musician in the Air Force, but anyhow, I loved Colorado, and I was trying to remember, and I went and saw that you're like north of us between. We were in the Springs, so
Yep.
you're like north between Denver and the Springs. So
That's right. Yeah.
God's
I,
country out there.
That's right. Yeah, we love it. Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. There's one thing that I did want to hit on that I missed, and it kind of comes back to kind of living in the single father household, which, you know, to your point, men are struggling right now, and there's this clarity in this identity. I think men are losing their identity in a lot of ways right now, and I think veterans even more so. Again, as soon as you leave the military, there's this identity piece that you hold on to that no longer exists anymore. You know, I'm a Navy pilot, I'm a Navy officer, I'm a midshipman, I'm a sailor. Like all these identities get put on the shelf, but a lot of you try to hold on to it. This isn't like a quote, but I think the last time I saw, they were saying that like 1 in 4 households are fatherless right now. And I think there's men in general are 4 to 10 times more likely to commit suicide than women are right now. And, I think the stats are still the same. We've heard it for a long time. 22 veterans a day, 23 veterans a day. I think a majority of those are men. So something's going on. Something's going on in this world right now that men need a community. They need guidance. They need clarity. They need to re-identify themselves. And there's a lot of noise out there right now. There's a lot of these high performing masculine men on Facebook and Instagram that are you know trying to define what being masculine is and what being a man is. But um, I think if we just go back to that big thick book, of the Bible and follow what Jesus was as a man, I think we'd be all right. So I just kind of wanted on that.
No, amen, brother. You have to engage your mind in this as well, right? I mean, you can, use your biceps to do a lot of cool things too, but
Yeah.
you have to also have a heart. There's a lot to it, right? Being a man is simple, but it's also complex if you understand what it means to be a man. But uh, the part that you spoke to with purpose, right? Uh, I agree 110%. You leave the service and it's over in one day. You know, it's absolutely over. There's no blending. It's done in one day. You're not putting the uniform on. You're not going in. All your buddies have about faced and they're back at mission and you're trying to figure out, who am I? You know,
You have been
that sense of,
forgotten. You have been
yeah.
replaced.
Yes, that sense of purpose is huge. And, Sarah has heard me talking about this now for 4 years, that veterans absolutely struggle with that. That's part of when I was hosting a podcast, that's one of the things that I would always, kind of hammer. And the guests that would come on, they were all about it too, because they were folks that had served and transitioned well or struggled. And so we talked about those things, and that sense of purpose absolutely matters. And some of the folks that are about to leave are like, what? Because they haven't been on the other side yet.
That's right.
There's a lot that comes with change because you can be going through that change in your life, but your kids are also going through change because maybe they're getting ready to leave the house. Maybe you're moving again. I mean, change is constant, and how we manage that change and where we plug in with our hearts and souls in determining and finding that purpose. The ones that don't find the purpose are the ones, um, what is that? I'm trying to remember the verse where the devil's looking to devour
Yeah.
folks. And if you're easy pickings, you are absolutely easy pickings. And so, yeah, purpose along with, where your soul is, those things are what define us as people, but absolutely as men. So, yeah, again, I'm so happy I'm here today, and thanks again
Yeah.
for what you're doing, Stu.
Absolutely. Well, and I think a big mistake that a lot of military veterans go through is that they think their purpose is going to be found in the next job, the next paycheck. Again, they get, I don't want to talk bad about like, transition assistance program, the TAPS class or whatever, but like the sole focus is your resume and your next job. And you get so focused in on, honed in on where that next paycheck is going to come from. And I think a lot of people think that purpose and that fulfillment is going to come from that next job. Um, but I'll be the first to tell you that my job had nothing to do with finding fulfillment and finding purpose. I mean, flipping houses, buying rentals, that was great for the paycheck for the wallet, but it didn't fulfill me. It didn't give me any purpose. I mean, this men's group, which I'm not getting paid for, I don't make any money off of. That's what's fulfilling. That's what's giving me purpose, right? And so I think, a lot of people make that mistake. And I mean, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can do to find purpose in your life. and some of it has nothing to do with making money. I'd say more often than not, it has nothing to do with making money.
And the best things in life are often free, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
along with the time. Yeah, amen.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That was great. Barry.
Yeah, Stu, thanks, man. It's interesting. As you talk, I also had a sense of sadness because of our backgrounds.
Mm.
We're all in our mid 70s, some in their 80s, and some have died. So there was no, just watching this cat, he's like a Scud missile on the move. Um, so there was no, very little awareness of gathering with other men. Look, product of the 70s, at some point we were all hippies on the move. But that was quite ungrounded. It wasn't grounded in the masculine energy. In fact, the hippies generation was quite a feminine, and I don't mean that as it's that masculine feminine. We flipped it.
Right.
So we were a bit soft and fluffy. And I don't know how much we achieved in that. And then we blasted off into life and carrying the it's almost the wave of impact from our histories, either at war or the families we were in, because our fathers were generally hardworking who didn't talk much. And just to digress, I had very little to do with my dad, and part of that was his wounds as an immigrant from Romania pre-World War II, and the losses he experienced growing up with an uncle who was quite abusive because he had to leave his father and mother as a young boy. And so he couldn't talk. And he had a lot of grief when he had to leave Rhodesia to go to South Africa. And we weren't given the skills to know how to break through with that. And I remember shortly before he died, I dwelled for months on this thing about, and it's really what you talk about, this thing on soul connection, heart connection. Otherwise, we're left with unfinished business. And this thought of unfinished business haunted the hell out of me. And one day, my mother, bless her, disappeared for about 10 minutes. And I just took a deep breath in and I sat down with him and I told him that I loved him and I really appreciated everything he brought into the family. And he started crying and I started crying. And that was it. And then shortly after that, about 2 months after they died. But I know that 10 minutes made the difference between being haunted and at least being left with a sense of connectedness. But, there were so little opportunities in our lives. I mean, after the war, I blasted through 5 immigrations, 2 marriages, just chaos, absolute chaos. And eventually, I was in South Africa, I was in England, I was in Israel for about 4 years. Then back to South Africa, and eventually the only place I found my peace. I mean, I've always been quite spiritual, and I've meditated and done that for 47 years, and I have an extremely strong faith, and thank God for that, because I'm not sure where I would have been without that presence of the divine or God in my life. But geez, when there were no such things as groups, they just didn't exist. Plus, a group for me was like. It's like I often say to my wife, put me in front of a psychologist. I hope he's got a healthcare fund because this is not going to go down well. And I am a psychologist and I recognize that part of myself. And it's only in probably this stage of my life that I'm starting to soften and allow the more deeper feelings to come up. I mean, I know I'm in touch, but I don't talk much. It's never been in my wiring. I was probably at my best. I often say I was a runner, and while I was running was when I was really deeply connected to my soul and the earth and everything around me. I found peace. And so all I did was run, short runs, marathons, ultra marathons, constantly trying to hold on to that peace until I injured myself and no longer had that. So when I hear you talk about your group and the structure of your group, it's like, God, I wish that was in my world, because as immigrants as well, we don't have a country. My country lost the war. We don't belong. We don't have citizenship. The name doesn't exist. Rhodesians are a myth that live online or in the portals of memories of many people who are still interested in our history. And so we have such a profound lack of connectedness. And I know that when I discovered Sarah and the group and Scott and the guys and the girls had come on this, it was just such a powerful sense of relief to finally belong somewhere. And I think that thing of belonging, man, that's the thing we miss the most, eh? Um, and I'm at a stage now, my parents are dead. I have a couple of estrangement issues with a couple of my kids all of my kids, who decided to have a go at my wife. And, probably I have a bit of a fight response. So, push my wife, I'm going to come out the starting blocks pretty hard. So even at, what am I, 72 this year, um, there's still so much work to be done. Plus, like most of my generation, we were on this wheel of work. And it's funny, I said to Chris yesterday, I said to her, I got to get up early tomorrow morning. This guy's done things with property and found a way to step out of this wheel of illusion where we just run on the wheel until our heart stops. And I just wanted to hear how he did it and what he did. It's not that it defines who I am, but that material ease actually gives us time to be still. And I know that's probably one of the biggest things her and I talk about is how do we move out of this wheel from, I work full time and I was working double time when I was working with veterans till I woke up one day and I went, I love these brothers. I mean, I just adore them. But if I have to listen to one more person talking to me in a system which so disrespects veterans as well, where it's evidence-based CBT, exposure therapy, 10 sessions, what I call technicians of the soul. And I wanted to find a way of being that was a lot more soulful and connected into a slower pace. So I thought, yeah, I got to get up. So I think at 4:30 I woke up and just slowly waited. And I think you nail it so well, and the stages you talk about are so beautiful because this sense of being lost and disconnected, that's tough, eh? I mean,
Very tough.
you found it really in terms of my chronology. You found this relatively early, the sense of belonging and grounding in the soul and the heart and faith. This was not something that we've ever managed to do, and we're still new to my generation. I've got guys from Rhodesian Bush War, and our calls are 5 minutes long. They're check-ins.
Yeah.
And so to be surrounded by men and women where we start to have these conversations, I still probably don't give out much. I don't often talk about the struggles that I face, and that's a bit of a working edge anyway. But you're getting there, and I wanted to thank you for just what you represent. I mean, I'd love to know more. I rambled a bit, but yeah, my wiring's a bit slow when I start trying to do this kind of stuff. But what happened? What were the impacts of service on you? Um, how did it wear away the edges, or I often say, how did it etch into what I call the marrow of your bones that you then had to make your peace with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all called to service. I mean, God called us to serve, right? And I think you get that, as a young 18-year-old deciding to go into the military and you do 20 years of service, like that's just ingrained into you. And it's something that you desire. But again, like leaving the service and going into corporate America, uh, or trying to flip houses and be an entrepreneur and make a lot of money, like that goes away. And so I think there's a piece of your soul that's missing that you have to go and find, um, to be of service, to serve something that's bigger than you, serve something that's higher than you, right? To make this world a better place, to leave it better than when you entered it. And I think that's for every human being on this planet. God created you to do that. We were created in His image to make this world a better place and to serve others. And so I truly believe that every human has to find that. Every human has to find that. And it can be so many different things. And I think a lot of it comes from your past. I think I heard once that the person that you serve is the person that you were 5 years ago. If you go back 5 years from who you're a different person. Go serve that person, right? Um, One of the things that we do that is a really, really um, great exercise that kind of opens up a lot of clarity on what you know want to go do is we call it the eulogy exercise, and we took this from a group that we were a part of. You write two eulogies. One eulogy, you write the eulogy of your friend speaking at your funeral about who you are, but you want them to write it and speak it how you want it to hear, right? They can, how you want your eulogy to be read, you write it that way. The next eulogy, you have to write it, no lies, no truth telling, like just as it is right now, write your eulogy and state the facts. And if you look at those two eulogies, there's a big gap. There's a big gap between right now, who I am as an individual, if I died today and they had to write with no lies, versus what I want my eulogy to say on my deathbed. There's a big gap there. And that's just the starting point. You go fill those gaps to make it reality. And so, yeah, to your point, Barry, I think um, we all need community. We all need purpose. And, being a part of a tribe like that can really, really help. And finding a brotherhood, even if it's one person. I mean, if you ask most men these days, like, do they have a best friend? I'd say more often than not, most of them don't. Sarah, before the call, you'd said that your husband has like a group of three guys that he goes and meets with every single morning. I don't think most men have that, right? They don't have in person guys that you hug it out with and you talk through life with and you struggle and you cry on their shoulder. Like, we don't have that. We live on this online world. We're so focused on work. We're so focused on making money. We're on the social media and the news and everything else. And like, we have just this flawed definition of success right now. And I think we got to get back to the basics.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think so much of my tribe are dispersed around the world. I'm fortunate in that I've got a number of really good men, like an ex-chopper pilot in the war, an ex-special forces guy from South Africa, another guy who was a medic with the reconnaissance unit in the Rhodesian Bush War, and we all talk regularly. But it's talk that doesn't go too deep.
Yeah.
Whereas here on the Power of Our Story, we really do begin to, I can only say I begin to kind of peel away with others. I'm kind
Yeah.
of quite guarded with others. I mean, with my wife, I'm comfortably getting better. It's the
Well,
best way of
let
putting
me,
it.
if you allow, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, Barry, because I think this is also a mistake that a lot of military veterans make is, you change duty stations, you're at a certain location for 3 to 4 years, you get really close with people in the command, and then you move, right? And you change duty
You
stations.
do, yeah.
And those people that you were close with now are not nearby. And you have this feeling of being connected to them because you can get on the phone and call them. You have a feeling of being connected because you see them on Facebook or Instagram or any social media channel. But there's something very, very different that happens when you go and hug a guy, when you give a guy a high five, when you cry on his shoulder because something's like hard and like he's there to like help you through it, right? That in-person connection is on a whole different level than a good friend. And I have them too. Like, I have tons of friends that I can call that are
Mm,
across the US or,
mm.
other places. But like, my best friend in the world and business partner, his office is right next to me right now. And we see each other 4 days a week, and we go snowboarding, and we go hiking, and we go mountain biking, and we grab coffee, and we see our families, and like, we hang out and like hug and like just like, it's a whole different thing. And so I would encourage, men and women listening to, I think women are way better at it than men, but like, find a group of in-person, tribe. And again, it could be one dude, it could be one woman that you're seeing and hanging out with on a regular basis, because there's something different that happens there when you're in person.
Yeah, it's interesting. You reminded me that I think prior to meeting my wife about 11 and a half years ago, I took 7 years off relationships. It's just I needed to actually decompress. I needed to work my head out. And I met, there were three women, one of whom is still my best friend. And the four of us hung out together. We'd walk together, we'd sit together, we'd talk together. And that was the most beautiful period. I think also it gave me almost a new reprint on relationships because I was making some interesting choices. You know, if you wanted to go the hard route, I was a sniffer dog for doing the tough route. And that was really powerful. I think, yeah, the idea of being face to face is important. And I remember when I began working with veterans in 2002, and as it took time for me, you know, when I first began, I thought psychologist, well trained, I've got it nailed. And then slowly, after listening to these guys, this little voice in my head went off and went, you're not quite there yet, brother. You got a bit of work to do. And slowly, as I found a way of languaging this thing that went on between them and me, and I wouldn't even call it therapy. It was a conversation between two men based on love and self-respect, except they were not there for me. So it was a bit one-sided. But I know at the end, the guys would often, and some of these guys were like 6'4", big boys. And we'd finish the sessions off and there'd be a massive hug and I love you, brother. And just that experience of the contact and the heart. And I knew that that was a massive part of what I started to become. Like they weren't there for my healing, but there was something that was transforming in me by doing the work that I was doing. In terms of broadening that, yep, at the moment, you know, the two of us are, I often say, we both have very interesting families. So the best way of putting it, it's two of us as a pretty much a soul unit, working bloody hard to try and keep the wheel turning. And we do well with that, but it's not an answer. But we both have a strong spiritual journey and we share that spiritual journey. And that's powerful. I would not imagine a life without it. But yeah, that thing when you do activate more getting together with others is yeah, that's still a work in progress. Still a work in progress. So it was good to hear what you do and the kind of things you guys do talk about. Yeah,
Thanks,
you've
Barry.
done well at for me as a fairly early stage. You know, I'm still chasing your tail.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, look, I mean, you know, I mean, I love Scott. And Sarah's this beautiful feminine presence that just, I don't know, loves our hearts and holds our hearts. And, you know, I can tell you this might not be flesh to flesh, but gee, it nurtures the soul and nurtures the spirit and nurtures faith and nurtures all the parts of ourselves where, as a man, we do struggle. So better than nothing, eh?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amen to that.
And I'll second that absolutely, Barry. And Stu, I mean, you may have, fallen to this as well, but I mean, even, Barry mentioned at some point that he was rambling. I mean, but his voice, it wouldn't matter what he was saying. You just want to hear him talk, right?
That's right. That's right.
So, but he always has something very good to talk about. Very, very thoughtful. It comes from the heart as well, and it's so good to see, right? Something that both you guys touched on that I think is tremendous, and I think it's important, and that's when we find purpose. That if part of that purpose is giving back, that is huge because that helps heal right here. When you start to get to a point where you can give back, to where you volunteer and you're wanting to help people, and you're not looking for anything in return, you get that return, and it's amazing. It lifts a lot of the yoke off your shoulders in certain areas, especially when you see folks that benefit from what it is you're doing, right? Whether it's you or whether you're part of an organization that's doing good, when you see the impact it has on people's lives, man, that recycles back into your heart so well. And then that helps build that purpose, right? I always tell folks, hey man, if you can find the time to get into an organization to where you're helping people, you're volunteering, or if you just find areas to volunteer within your community, give that a try. And that's an investment that is at a higher order. It's good on so
Yeah,
many levels.
I agree 100%.
It's that sense of service, hey, Scott. I mean, I think, and thank God, I often wondered what the hell. I was a vegetarian and I still am. I'm more kind of a vegan thing person now, but a vegetarian vegan in the Rhodesian Bush War, where really that was an extremely violent war. Um, and it was interesting because that was probably the most powerful thing that happened to me because I had to reconcile eventually how the two parts of me that are capable of killing but preserve life, how do they coexist? And I realized more and more that this is quite a big challenge for veterans that are we cold? Are we unfeeling? Can we take life and still get on with our day? But yet, how do we become dedicated, loving fathers and husbands? Where does faith live? I was just listening. Misha had sent me a video clip, an earlier one from, it must have been just post 9/11. And he talked about his loss of faith during his time in the Vietnam War. And I suspect a lot of people do lose their faith in being exposed to the horrors of war. And it's how we reconcile these seemingly opposing opposites, but yet they're not. And I realized that my time, it wasn't a long period of time in the Rhodesian Bush War, but how that lay dormant until 2002, till it arose and I realized I actually had a mission. And I always say that my mission has always been to make sure that no one comes home to have to die. Because I think even parts of myself died because we didn't understand where we came from. And as I said, the only time I felt truly alive was when I was running forever in nature. But that's not a solution. It's not a solution. At some point, you've got to stop. And when you stop, those wolves come around and they sit in a circle and they're ready for the story that you don't want to share. But my time at war has informed everything. I mean, the book I wrote is a book, it was drawn from the collective wisdom of all these beautiful people I've sat with. They taught me and we taught each other how to start to have conversations that I call are veteran informed. Why use psychobabble when we can talk about everything about who they were that they can bring into who they are and find healing from the point of what is already inside them? So it was a real gift. It also informed my sense of compassion. And compassion and service are probably one of the most powerful things that have helped me heal. I don't have a lot of opportunities to have conversations with heaps of men. I mean, my hours are long, my time is busy. I'm still on the wheel that you described, and my time is running out. And so, Chris and I talk a lot about what does it look like to have a level of tranquility. And this is where, when I heard your story, I went, because we talk a lot about how do we get enough to save enough to get this mortgage down and then to buy a little unit by a sea down south from us, about 2 hours. Because the goal is just to be able to get up in the morning, walk on the sea, watch the sunset, and breathe. And have a place where we step out of this rat on a wheel type stuff. And I mean, our rat on the wheel is not a bad one because within it, we live deep cycles of connecting with spirit and faith and our hearts. So that one works well, but man, we're still running hard, eh? So that's why I was very interested that, some people can do it. And sometimes when I look inside, I often go, man, where does that wiring come from, eh? It's like, I just, I've got a lot of very good wiring, but jumping into wealth and the security, not even so much the security, the freedom that it gives to not pay attention to certain things is still a work in progress. So for me, it was really interesting to hear how you've managed to do that and how you've turned that also into service.
I appreciate it.
You know, it's interesting. We have a lot of women in our network, but I think this was exactly what it was meant to be. I think just having it very small and intimate, having a men's conversation. I really appreciate you, Stu, coming on and sharing what you did. And Scott and Barry, I mean, it's gold what you add to the conversation. I'm so grateful that people out there watching this talk get this opportunity. And thank you for letting me be a fly on the wall here too. Yeah, I really
Thank you for
appreciate
hosting it.
it. Oh my goodness. Stu, is there anything that you would like to add as we say goodbye that you want us to walk away with?
I mean, I think we've hit on a lot of topics, but I think at the top of that list is, if military veterans, especially those that are transitioning out, I think most important is just to continue to be intentional and try to find a community that you can surround yourself with, and then really dig deep and find some purpose in your life that's going to be outside the military, and it doesn't have to be your next job, it doesn't have to be your next paycheck. Um, like I said, what we've transitioned to is an open community at the Kinetic Man. We have a call weekly. It's an hour call just like this. It's on Tuesdays at 12 o'clock Mountain, 11 o'clock Pacific. It's an invite only, but we would love to have more conversations with men that are interested in being in a community like this. Um, it is primarily military veteran, but there's others that are not in the military veteran space as well that have joined, because it's just a good space to be in. So yeah, if anyone's interested, they can reach out to me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can look me up on LinkedIn, or I think you put it out there, Sarah, like our website. You can go to thekineticman.com and just hit on get more info and send us an email, and we can jump on a call and talk more about it. And then lastly, we have a podcast called the Kinetic Man Podcast, and we just have a lot of very similar conversations like we just had today. So I appreciate the opportunity, Sarah. And
Thank you
Scott and
so
Barry,
much.
thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks, brother. It was really a pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
if I
So
could
fun.
sneak a quick last question, and I meant to ask this when I was talking earlier, but what's the background behind the Kinetic Man, the naming convention, and you know,
Yeah. Well, we don't want to get to the end of our lives and on that funeral bed in the eulogy say that this man had a lot of potential. And I think the most important thing is that we actually take action on being intentional and living our lives. We can talk a lot, but until you do something about it, you're not going to change. So we want to be kinetic. We want to take action and be intentional of living the lives that we say are important to us.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, good
absolutely,
stuff. Mm.
yeah,
thank you. And
spot
just
on.
we'll have all your information too on the description for the YouTube.
Great.
Again, I Scott and Barry also thank you for your gold in the addition to this. And thanks again, Stu.